Before the US even had an air force, a few madmen took to the sky in planes held together by tape and hope and changed the entire war. It's 1941. The Pacific is quiet. And somewhere in the California desert, a handful of men are flying rickety biplanes over the sand, pretending the enemy is real. They aren't even part of an air force. They're just the US Army Air Corps. But in a few years, these same men will define what it means to own the sky. Lieutenant Boyd Buzz Wagner climbs into a P-40 Warhawk, olive drab, paint flaking, the engine coughing like an old man. He wipes sweat from his brow. "Let's see if this old girl can dance," he mutters. Minutes later, he's airborne over the Philippines. Below him, chaos. December 10th, 1941. Just 3 days after Pearl Harbor, Japanese Zeros sweep in like locusts. The Air Corps is outnumbered, outgunned, and outdated. Half their planes never make it off the ground. Wagner dives straight into the formation anyway. The P-40 rattles as bullets rip through the fuselage. One hits the canopy. Glass explodes across his face. "Not today," Wagner growls. He flips his Warhawk around, rolls under the enemy, and fires. The Zero bursts into a ball of orange flame. That day, Wagner becomes America's first air ace of World War II, and the legend begins. But the truth? No one back home even knows who these men are. There's no Air Force, just a branch buried inside the Army. They get the leftovers: old fuel, hand-me-down planes, and orders that make no sense. Still, they fight. Across the ocean, another pilot takes off in darkness. Captain Robert Olds, commanding a B-17 Flying Fortress. The target, a Nazi submarine base along the French coast. Clouds swallow the formation. Radar's primitive. Visibility, 0. Olds leans forward. "Navigator, get me a heading." "Sir, I can't see the ground." "Then use your gut." The bomber crew laughs, half in fear, half in madness. They break through the clouds. Flak bursts around them. Black blossoms in the gray sky. The first B-17 is hit. The second spins out, trailing smoke. Olds grips the yoke. "We hold formation." They drop their bombs. Perfect hits. But on the way out, a German fighter tears through their flank. The tail gunner yells, "Bandits, 6 o'clock! Olds, then shoot the bastard!" The twin 50 cals roar. Tracer lines cross the sky. The Messerschmitt explodes midair. By the time they land in England, half their squadron is gone. But the mission is a success. When asked what kept him flying through the flak, Olds simply says, "Because the men behind me didn't have parachutes." Back in Washington, the generals begin to understand. Air power isn't a side project. It's the future. But not everyone agrees. Many in the old guard call them sky cowboys. "Planes don't win wars," one general insists. "Infantry does." Tell that to the crews over Europe, who live or die by the wind. 1943, Sicily. Major John Allison leads the 1st Air Commando Group, a bizarre unit designed for covert operations behind enemy lines. They fly gliders into jungles, drop mules by parachute, use hacked-together C-47s as gunships before the concept even existed. When someone asks Allison if he's scared of flying through enemy anti-air fire, he just smirks. "I'm scared of landing," he says. Meanwhile, women back home are joining the sky for the first time. The WASPs, Women Air Force Service pilots, ferry aircraft, test fighters, and fly everything short of combat. Jacqueline Cochran, one of their leaders, once took a P-51 Mustang higher than any man dared. At 30,000 feet, her oxygen line froze. She passed out, then somehow woke up mid-dive and pulled up just in time. When reporters called her reckless, she replied, "Courage is not reckless, it's practiced." But the war keeps grinding. The Air Corps stretches thin. Thousands of pilots lost. They're fighting in Europe, Africa, the Pacific, and in every theater, new legends are born. Over Italy, a young black pilot named Lieutenant Charles McGee from the Tuskegee Airmen squadron takes off at dawn. His Mustang gleams red at the nose, the mark of the Red Tails. Protect the bombers. Don't chase kills. His commander had said. McGee holds that order in his heart. German fighters appear on the horizon. He could chase glory, but instead, he stays with the bombers. Every B-17 in his group makes it home. When he lands, his fuel tank's dry, and his hands are trembling. He went on to fly over 400 combat missions, more than almost any pilot in U.S. history. Years later, he would tell a reporter, "Before the Air Force, we didn't fight for medals. We fought for respect." 1944. The skies over Europe are a storm of fire. B-17s, P-51s, and P-47 Thunderbolts roar across the continent. Every mile of air superiority is bought with blood. In the cockpit of a Thunderbolt, Captain Don Gentile, the ace of aces, dives straight at a German airfield. Machine gun fire rips through the canopy. He doesn't flinch. One squeeze of the trigger and a line of parked fighters explodes beneath him. His squadron radios in. "Gentile, you're hit." "Yeah," he laughs, "but so are they." Back in England, General Henry Hap Arnold studies a map covered in red and blue pins. Each pin marks a raid, a mission, or a pilot lost. He looks to his staff. "If we want to win this war," he says, "we need an air force, not a department." And so the idea begins to take shape. From the desert fields of California to the frozen airfields of England, pilots start wearing the title proudly, unofficially at first, U.S. Army Air Forces. The name sounds clunky, but to the men flying through flak at 20,000 feet, it means everything. By 1945, air power has changed the world. The Doolittle Raiders strike Tokyo in daring daylight. Carrier pilots fight over Midway, and the Enola Gay drops a bomb that ends the war and begins a new era. The age of the sky has arrived, but for every headline victory, there are hundreds of unknown names. Pilots who vanished into the clouds, crews who never came back, and mechanics who kept the planes flying on willpower alone. One mechanic wrote in his diary, "We give them wings and hope." In September 1947, the dream finally becomes real. President Truman signs the National Security Act, and with a stroke of a pen, the United States Air Force is born. For the first time in history, the sky itself is a battlefield and a home. The old Army Air Corps insignia is replaced by the silver wings of independence. General Carl Spaatz becomes the first Chief of Staff of the new branch. At the ceremony, he looks out at rows of pilots standing at attention, their uniforms crisp, their eyes sharp. "You built this with your blood," he says quietly. "Don't ever forget where it came from." From that day forward, the men and women who once fought as outcasts became legends. Their planes, P-51s, B-17s, P-47s, became relics, symbols of courage and defiance. And above them all, a new motto took shape: aim high. In the decades to come, their legacy would carry through the jet age into Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, and beyond the Earth itself. When astronauts stepped onto the moon, they wore the same wings those early flyers once dreamed of. But the spirit of 1941 never left. The underdogs, the improvisers, the men who strapped bazookas to planes, and the women who flew without permission. They built an Air Force before it even had a name. Today, when you see an F-35 roar into the clouds or a B-2 vanish into the stratosphere, remember this: every one of those machines was born from the courage of a handful of pilots who refused to let gravity decide the war. Their story isn't just history. It's a reminder that innovation, courage, and madness often start the same way, with a man and a machine, and the belief that the sky belongs to those who dare.